Member for Dawson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In light of the fact we're all about to go on a summer holiday from this place, I thought I could suggest that we could take a little tour. 2 tours, in fact, one on paper and one in the motor car. And I'll start with the last one first. I'd like to invite the Prime Minister, the Treasurer and the Minister for Infrastructure and Transport to come on a little tour with me, and the member can come as well if he so wants. We'll call it a magical mystery tour. In fact, I can even put on that outstanding Beatles album of the same name in the six-stacker for their listening pleasure. So I challenge these people to come for a drive with me from Rockhampton to Townsville. It'll be a lovely little tour along a scenic track that we in Queensland like to call the Bruce Highway. But it's probably better known to this government as Penny Lane, which I think is track number 9 on the Magical Mystery Tour album, because Penny is about what this government wants to spend on the Bruce Highway in this region. They love to tax this region. They'll happily bleed all the revenue out of this part of Queensland, but they don't want to stand for anything but returning the barest of minimums. By the end of the tour, they'll see what I mean. The drive from Rockhampton to Townsville is approximately 725 kilometres, almost half of the total length of the Bruce Highway, which connects Brisbane in the southeast corner to Cairns in the far north of Queensland. I chose this specific piece of highway for our little summer holiday drive for a couple of reasons. Firstly, 400 kilometres of the trip will be driving the length of my electorate of Dawson, but I've also included 325 kilometres to the south in the electorate of Capricornia. The second reason, the reason why I also want them to enjoy the scenic drive from Rockhampton, is because this stretch of the highway services the absolute powerhouse of the national economy. This stretch of the highway is crucial for the service of the coal mining industry that these three guys are so keen to tax the hell out of. This stretch of the highway runs through that part of Queensland that generates billions and billions of dollars in revenue to state and federal governments every year. But it is off the radar for real investment, and that's a shame, because without the vital investment to support the resources boom will cease to exist. And that should make the Greens happy. Maybe we could put a dog trailer on the back so Bob can tag along. Or maybe he might be in the front and someone else might be in the dog trailer. I'd like to begin this trip at the beginning of February, Madam Deputy Speaker, enough time to enjoy a Queensland summer before Parliament kicks off again. We can head out from Rockhampton at the start of February and see how far we get. You see, there could be a few obstacles to overcome. Firstly, in Rockhampton and the notorious Yeppen Crossing, it can be a little damp this time of year. I'm sure the Prime Minister, the Treasurer and the Minister for Infrastructure and Transport have experienced delays getting home in their own electorates. You know the drill: peak hour traffic jams, maybe even an accident closing one lane. Dinner might be cold by the time they get home. Well, dinner might go mouldy if they were waiting for the Bruce Highway to open at Yeppen in flood time. Earlier this year, it was closed for 10 days straight. 10 days. That is the main artery for the entire state of Queensland. This is the artery that 7 million tonnes of freight goes along each year, including luxury items to North Queenslanders like food. When the highway at Rockhampton is closed, Mackay is on rations. During the closure earlier this year, we saw fisticuffs over the last loaf of bread at supermarkets in Mackay, and fast food chains actually rationing chickens, one per family. If the Bruce Highway is open at Rockhampton and we make the way through to Mackay unscathed, we can actually fight the traffic, battling with Datsuns and dump trucks alike, as the Mackay Ring Road is about as close to reality as a Labor surplus. Despite the Minister for Infrastructure and Transport skiding in question time today about funding for the Mackay Ring Road, it is still very much a pipe dream. This government has made a commitment to make a plan to fund a study on how to plan the Ring Road. This government will be a distant memory before tar is ever laid on that project. If we get through Mackay without being run over by the dump trucks, then there's the Gaganga Plains to negotiate in the Whitsundays. Not too bad if it's dry, but then again, February's the wet season. The problem with Gaganga Plains is that when it floods, it not only stops traffic on the state's main artery once again, but it also stops traffic from the Whitsunday Coast Airport getting through to the Whitsunday Coast. And that is, as you can imagine, a problem for the Whitsundays, which is absolutely 100% dependent on tourism for its survival. If we can get past the Whitsundays and make it up to Bowen, Then there is the rather tricky Sandy Creek that we have to worry about. Again, it's not bad if it's dry, but as a constituent said to me in not so polite language this year, it only takes a cane toad to whiz on the side of the road to close the highway at Sandy Creek. Again, that not only stops traffic on the state's major artery, it also stops workers who live in Bowen and further south from getting to the job site at Abbott Point. A multi-billion-dollar facility being constructed at Abbott Point, all dependent on the integrity of a cane toad's bladder. If we can keep the cane toads away from the bar for a week, and this magical mystery tour takes us further up north, we've only got a few obstacles left, apart from the ever-present potholes and patchy repairs. Yellow Gin Creek is another spot that is not bad when it's dry, but I've got to tell you it's a great place and a long time place to camp if it's raining. And the Horton River Bridge is a test to be taken only by the strong-willed and bravest of drivers. If you have the misfortune to be heading north across the Horton Bridge at the same time as a truck is heading south, you will have a very strong urge to hold your breath and think skinny thoughts. If we can make Brisbane to Townsville in one piece and without having to camp by the roadside, it will be a miracle. The Bruce Highway is a joke and the locals know it. So you would think that this government would be doing something about it. Well, let's take a trip along the Bruce Highway a different way. Let's do it on paper. There's this paper that the state government's put out called the Bruce Highway Upgrade Strategy, and it's clear the Labor Party in Queensland shares the same lack of care about this region, my region, as the federal government does. This strategy lays out a plan for upgrading the highway over 20 years. It points out on page 5 that this strategy builds on a previous paper called the 2007 Brisbane to Cairns Corridor Strategy. So what's been done in recent years? Well, according to the new strategy, and I quote, "Over recent years a number of projects have either commenced or have been completed to improve safety, capacity and flood immunity. There are projects funded or jointly funded by Australian and Queensland governments, and let's look at them in 3 sections. First section, everywhere south of our magical mystery tour, saw the major progress on 12 kilometres realignment of the highway south of Gympie. It saw the completion of $205 million widening works and the provision of 6 lanes at Caboolture. It also saw the completion of a $71 million duplication at Gympie and the completion of a 2-lane motorway. Every single one of these projects is either starting, continuing or finishing real projects, improvements you can drive on today. Now let's look to the north of our magical mystery tour. We saw the start of a $115 million realignment at Cardwell Range. We saw flood immunity and safety works from Townsville to Cairns, $347 million. We saw the start of a duplication of the Douglas Arterial at a cost of $110 million, and the 2-lane motorway of the Townsville Ring Road stages 2 and 3 were completed at $119 million. Again, every single one is starting or finishing real projects, improvements that you can drive on today. Now let's look at what's happened on our magical mystery tour stretch, almost one half of the Bruce Highway. Completion of a $4 million urban congestion study, completion of planning for a highway duplication, the commencement of a $5 million Fitzroy River floodplain study, 2 studies started and a plan completed. The shovel didn't even make it out of the shed. Will this region ever get taken seriously? Will the obstacles our magical mystery tour faces ever be addressed? Here's when things are planned in this study. The Mackay Ring Road to commence in 10 years, the Gaganga Plain to commence planning in up to 10 years, the Sandy Gully to be built higher in up to 10 years, Yellow Gin Creek up to 10 years, Horton River Bridge up to 10 years. A decade to wait. Well, that is a shameful plan for the region that these Labor governments want to bleed dry, and it's a plan that the good people of Central Queensland and North Queensland won't ever forget. And I've got to tell you, if the Prime Minister, the Treasurer and the Minister for Infrastructure and Transport want to come on this tour with me, it will be one that they won't forget either, Madam Deputy Speaker.